Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to unpack the profound and, honestly, pretty dark commentary hidden right beneath the surface of F. Scott Fitzgerald's classic novel, The Great Gatsby. You know, it's funny, we constantly use the term Gatsby-esque today, right? We use it to describe these extravagant modern parties, massive mansions, and just obscene, opulent wealth. People literally throw Gatsby-themed weddings and New Year's Eve bashes, completely missing the tragic irony behind that phrase. Because this isn't just a story about a guy who knows how to throw a good party. Not at all. It's a deep and sometimes deeply uncomfortable look at the very fabric of our society, the corrosive nature of wealth, and the absolute hollowness of living a purely materialistic life. But before we really jump into the analysis, I want you to just pause for a second. Imagine dedicating your entire youth, all your energy, your literal identity to one singular goal. Now ask yourself, what if you spent your whole life chasing a dream, only to wake up one day and discover that the dream itself was an absolute illusion? It's a terrifying, earth-shattering thought, isn't it? And consider this follow-up. What if all that wealth could buy the mansions, the legendary parties, and widespread fame, but never actually give you true happiness? I mean, we see this playing out right now in our modern world, don't we? Billionaires and celebrities who seemingly have everything you could ever want, yet they constantly grapple with this deep, very public unfulfillment. Well, that timeless struggle is the central, haunting premise of the masterpiece we are exploring today. Okay, so to really understand this text, we're going to methodically break our analysis down into 6 key parts. 1. The Roaring Twenties illusion. 2. Nick and the wealthy elite. 3. The mystery of Jay Gatsby. 4. Symbols of hope and decay. 5. The collapse of the dream. And finally, 6. Legacy of the American dream. Let's start with part 1, The Roaring Twenties illusion, the glamour and the emptiness. Published back in 1925, this novel just perfectly captures a post-war society caught in this strange, chaotic contradiction of extreme luxury and hidden emptiness. Interestingly enough, the book was actually a total commercial flop during Fitzgerald's lifetime. It only became a defining classic years later. You have to remember, World War I had just ended, leaving in its wake a deeply traumatized lost generation. And to cope with that immense psychological toll, society basically decided it wanted to numb itself. They dove headfirst into alcohol, jazz, and relentless partying. America was frantically trying to figure out what came next, leading to a decade of just unprecedented, wild excess. We're talking about a booming post-war economy, jazz music echoing through the cities all night, and rapid new technologies fundamentally changing daily life. People truly, deeply believed that absolutely anyone could become endlessly successful. But masking all that glittering excitement was a really troubling rise in greed, corruption, and deepening social divisions. A huge factor here was prohibition, the nationwide ban on alcohol. Because instead of stopping people from drinking, prohibition just fueled massive underground wealth. It gave rise to ruthless criminal empires and this culture of casual law-breaking. And Fitzgerald? He saw right through the overflowing champagne glasses to the hollow, corrupt core of it all. Moving right along to part 2, Nick and the wealthy elite, the observers and the privileged. We enter this world through our narrator, Nick Carraway, who is the ultimate outsider looking in. Nick moves to New York for finance, setting up his modest little life in West Egg, directly across the bay from his elite cousins. Now look at this dynamic. We have Tom Buchanan, who represents the untouchable, inherited, old money. Because his immense wealth has been handed down through generations, Tom possesses this arrogant invincibility. He's aggressive, he's openly unfaithful, and he genuinely believes the rules simply do not apply to him. On the other side, we have his wife, Daisy. On the surface, incredibly charming and beautiful. But beneath that exterior lies a woman trapped in a golden cage. She's secretly uncertain and deeply cynical about her entire life. Nick watches this deeply troubled marriage unfold, giving us a front-row seat to the dysfunction and moral bankruptcy of America's wealthy elite. Which brings us to part 3, the mystery of Jay Gatsby, the man behind the parties. Right next door to Nick in West Egg lives his incredibly wealthy neighbor, Jay Gatsby. And the extravagance of Gatsby's life is legendary. He throws these massive, endless weekend parties at his enormous mansion, designed to be complete and utter sensory overloads. We're talking full orchestras playing under the stars, literal mountains of fresh citrus imported just for juicing, and an endless flow of highly illegal underground champagne. There are hundreds of guests, most of whom show up completely uninvited, just to soak in the glamour. But the craziest part? Most of them have never even met their host, Gatsby just kind of lingers in the shadows of his own house, surrounded by wild rumors that he's a decorated war hero or maybe a ruthless criminal. But here is the real kicker. His entire public persona is just an elaborate illusion, built for one desperate reason. When Nick finally gets to know him, he uncovers the private reality. Gatsby is actually a surprisingly polite, deeply hopeful man. Every single thing he has bought, every custom silk shirt, every imported chandelier, every vintage car, is a calculated prop in a massive theatrical performance meant for an audience of exactly one person, Daisy Buchanan. Years ago, they fell in love, but his lack of money kept them apart. While he was off fighting in the war, she opted for the safety of Calm's wealth. So now, Gatsby's obsessive devotion borders on madness. He's using all this newfound glamour to try and literally buy back a past that has already slipped away. Now let's dig into part 4, Symbols of Hope and Decay, the meaning beneath the surface. The green light at the end of Daisy's dock is perhaps the most famous symbol in all of American literature. Every night, Gatsby stands on his lawn and stares out across the bay at it, just glowing in the mist. It perfectly defines the American dream, that profoundly human tendency to endlessly chase an ideal future that always stays just out of reach. Think about it. How often do we tell ourselves, "I'll finally be happy when I get that promotion," or "when I buy that house"? That is our own personal green light. We believe that if we just acquire enough status, we'll find happiness. But much like that distant green light across the water, true fulfillment remains agonizingly elusive. But just outside that glittering wealth of Long Island lies the Valley of Ashes. Sitting directly between the pristine mansions and the vibrant energy of New York City, it is a bleak, suffocating industrial area, filled with poverty and despair. This isn't just a poor neighborhood, folks. It represents the profound human cost of the Roaring Twenties' unchecked capitalism. It's the engine room of the economy, the literal dumping ground for the excesses of the rich. They casually drive their luxury cars right through the smoke and ash without ever even bothering to look out the window at the impoverished reality they leave behind. Overlooking all this despair are the giant, faded billboard eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg. A lot of people interpret these massive, unblinking eyes as a symbol of judgment. But the brilliant, deeply cynical insight Fitzgerald offers here is that Dr. T.J. Eckleburg is merely an advertisement for optometrists. He is suggesting that in 1920s America, unbridled consumerism and advertising have literally replaced God as the ultimate judge of society. Even as the rich continue to party away in their mansions, these commercialized eyes silently watch the ethical and moral decline happening down in the ashes. This tension leads us perfectly into part 5, the collapse of the dream, reality breaks through. So, Gatsby manages to reunite with Daisy, and for a brief, euphoric moment, he really thinks his dream is realized. But when Tom and Gatsby finally clash in a sweltering New York hotel room, we see the impenetrable, brutal reality of the class system. Tom destroys Gatsby not by having more money, but by weaponizing his social class. He exposes exactly how Gatsby earned his fortune through illegal bootlegging. Tom is entirely secure in his inherited status, making it painfully clear that in America, it's not just about having money, it's about having the right kind of money. Gatsby is wealthy, sure, but because of his background, he will be forever excluded from their elite world. Caught right in the middle is Daisy. She is ultimately torn, facing this tragic internal choice between her raw romantic emotions for Gatsby and the safe, familiar comfort of Tom's status. And right here, we see her ultimate cowardice. Daisy retreats into her money. She might deeply care for Gatsby, but her attachment to security is just way too strong. Old money protects its own, you know? And Daisy would rather be miserable but utterly secure with Tom than risk her social standing for a scandalous, uncertain life with Gatsby. She simply cannot fully commit to his fantasy. Dreams often become distorted by reality. As the story hits its climax, Gatsby's imagined future completely falls apart. I mean, 5 years is a really long time, and the real flawed Daisy could never possibly live up to the perfect, idealized fantasy Gatsby had been obsessively building in his head day after day. Nostalgia tricks our minds in remembering things way better than they actually were. And reality will always, eventually, break through and shatter those unrealistic, towering expectations. Let's wrap things up with Part 6, Legacy of the American Dream, Why the Great Gatsby Still Matters. Throughout the text, Fitzgerald methodically walks us through 4 incredibly powerful core themes. He forces us to genuinely question the American dream and whether accumulating wealth actually leads to happiness.
He exposes the rigid, invisible walls of social class, proving that money alone cannot erase those barriers. He highlights the profound tension between illusion and reality as characters dedicate their whole lives to creating false images. And finally, he shows us exactly how the relentless pursuit of an ideal can trap us in a dangerous obsession, forever trying to recreate a past that no longer exists.
And honestly, nearly a century later, this explainer highlights exactly why Gatsby remains so fiercely relevant today. Just think about our modern Instagram and TikTok culture. We all curate these flawless public illusions to hide our messy private realities. We constantly compare our everyday lives to the heavily filtered, manufactured lives of others. We still endlessly chase success, believing that true happiness and validation are waiting for us just beyond our next big achievement. Deep down, we are all still chasing the exact same validation that Jay Gatsby wanted. The ultimate takeaway from this novel is that wealth alone cannot provide meaning. It's a profoundly hollow pursuit if there is absolutely nothing genuine backing it up. Our dreams are incredibly important. They inspire us and drive us forward, but they must always remain grounded in reality, rather than some flawless fantasy we've built up in our heads. If our aspirations are weighed down purely by materialism, they will eventually drag us under. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Using Fitzgerald's own iconic sentiment, are we all just like Gatsby, boats beating on against the current, continually reaching across the dark water for our own distant green light that remains forever out of grasp? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with me. If you enjoyed this structured breakdown, make sure to seek out more explainers into the classic ideas that continue to shape our world.